So today we're going to share 15 things about what I've learned in 15 years in the film business. I've been lucky over the last 15 years to work on some productions. And I think the one thing that I can tell you from all these different productions, the one thing that came into the skill set at every single time was I think it's really important to work while you're studying because it opens the door into the business. It opens the door into how the industry actually functions and what roles people take on. And you can come back and apply that by learning to expand your mind with what you're learning, but in the practical environment. But that goes into my second point, is never underestimate the runner. Because in getting through the door, the first easiest position usually is a runner. But the advantage you have is a runner meets everybody. The runner is the best way to just get to know people, get to say hi, get to see how people are working. Networking and finding contacts. I think that's every artist's worst nightmare, because a lot of artists suffer from either being introverts at some point or introverted extroverts. The good parts about it is it will teach you about yourself. The bad parts about it is it will teach you about yourself. And so along the way, what you will learn is how to expand who you are, to understand as an artist what you prefer and what you don't prefer to create and build in those environments. The industry is really, really small. So it takes usually between a few calls and a few people to understand if someone's really legit or not. So don't burn bridges. Building relationships with your teams, it's the most important thing. One person can never make a film. It takes hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. And along the way, all those hundreds go through things like emotions, go through things like ups and downs, life. They become your family at some point. When you're in a creative space like making film, yes, there's a margin for error that's very tiny, but also within your crew, there needs to be a safe space. You should be allowed to make those mistakes, because if you don't make those mistakes creatively and someone's not there to hold you, then you're afraid to kind of push that boundary. You go to war together and then you build a certain bond and then you take it on to the next job and you go through the next thing again. Finding a specific field for yourself is really about being honest with yourself. What do you want to do and what are the stories you want to tell and how you want to tell it? You can't do everything. So pick the path that helps you tell your version best. And along the way, you'll learn the other skills. You got to find your niche of what your heart and soul really wants to tell. That's you just being open to constantly learning. Because if you're not open to learning, you won't get new jobs to acquire new skills. You're going to go back to doing the same thing again and again and again. So I think you need to understand the world is changing constantly. As an artist, you need to develop yourself. Athletes run on track and then they will use technology to advance that process. And artists are the same. We need to constantly be creating, and along the way you use what you have around you in the best way possible. You can complain about things, but if you actually try to explore something, I promise you will get not what you thought, because in between of what you plan and what the outcome is life. And along the way, what you dream of will never probably be exactly the same, but you get what it was meant to be. And I think that's the beauty of art. I think automatically, the fact that each person has an individual DNA makes our work individually unique. I would say attempting to copy someone's work is almost like giving them a highest level of accreditation of you loving their work. I like to do it with something I call facts and myth to create fiction. And so facts and myth to create fiction is my formula of how I break down art. And if it's rooted deeply into the factual world, then my creativity on it can build on something which eventually gives me fiction. And so if we can derive why we create with the intention that we create with, then it kind of adds on screen. The grass is always greener on the other side. So you think, oh, you know what, that person's job's not that hard. And then you go and try to do it and you're like, oh, wow, like I got to do this all day. I think it teaches you compassion. And I think it also teaches you how every individual can bring passion into their own skill. And just because you can't be passionate about something, someone else really is. And it's that passion that takes someone else's passion into their little bit, and all of it put together, like Jenga, of Lego, you put it up and then you have this structure that's standing in, but it's built of everyone's passions. Even attempting to find passion is hard sometimes. And I think that's when you really value people's work. Challenges as an international student, tons. Tons of challenges, but some of them are good, some of them are not so good, and those not so good ones are actually the really good ones eventually, because they make you learn more about yourself. Throw yourself into new environments. As an international student, people are going to look at you differently because you come from different cultures, you come from different backgrounds. Own it, own it, own it, wear it with your heart on your sleeve, so you understand that that's who you are. At the end of the day, your art will speak for itself. The challenges that you may face are people may not be accepting, but that's okay. If you have compassion and love, at some point they will choose to see it, and if they don't, you will find your tribe and you will move on. But at least you made the conscious choice of not choosing to react to that situation and rather responding, right? And so if you can do that, the good and bad situations as an international student is you bring your culture, you go into a whole different culture, and you come out as a whole different person. Own the entire experience and make the most out of it. So before we continue a little bit, I want to tell you a little bit about myself and where I studied, and a little bit about the journey. I ended up doing a art and design degree with Nottingham Trent International College, which is part of Kaplan. You get to learn and work with different teams, different crews, different problem-solving skills. And I think the one thing that I can tell you from all these different productions is the one thing that came into the skill set at every single time was compassion. And I think that's what makes Nottingham Trent's course super special, and very highly recommended in different countries, in different parts of the world. You can follow me on social media, find out more about what we're trying to do, but also check out the Nottingham Trent International College website, and you'll find out more about different things that you can study and learn. You don't go into that conversation with that mindset, because you'll never really make it. How many people want to become an astronaut, and how many of them actually go to space? It's based off why we do what we do. Why do we actually tell stories? That is not something money can really buy, right? My advice though is everyone does need to survive, and making a living is important. Find the closest thing that you can do while chasing your dreams in the world that you can work in. But you got to find a balance between mind, body, and soul. What pays the bills and what actually works with passion, which in Japanese term, they call ikigai. Because if you find your purpose, then you need to know that your ikigai is constantly changing. And your purpose is constantly changing, because as a person, we evolve, and the skills that we acquire unlock something else within us, and then that unlocks something else. And then as you go on, the chain reaction, which is our internal blockchain, starts to operate. But if you go just chasing money, then at some point you'll be left asking yourself the question, well, now I've made the money, what am I doing this for? So you got to find the balance. I don't consider myself working. To me, it's a very strange question when people are like, hey, do you do something outside your work? And it's like, to me, I'm like, if I have to wake up and do something outside of what I do, which is what I actually love, then what do I really do? So yes, I work in the business, but as I said before, that was the closest way to be in a world that I can do what I really want to do, because down the road, all this is gonna, kind of come together. So just gotta be really wanting to push into something new. That's it. And as an artist, I think everybody has that in them. They just find inspiration in different places, right? Some people find it through music, through comics, through dance, through whatever it may be. For me, it's martial arts, it's music, it's whatever I may choose to pick on that time. Yeah, everything was needed to be delivered yesterday, and that's just how the film business kind of works. What's possible in the time frame, and what's the budget you're working with, right? You got to make those choices, what battles to win and which ones to lose. It's a collective project. It's someone else's final decision on if it's not yours, and you have to roll with it. It's all about the ego management. You want to manage expectations, manage your personal ego, and manage the other person's by compassion. That's about it. Sometimes people don't get it, and those are our experiences. You just learn to live with it. To be in film, you need to be disciplined. As much as it seems like it's a rock and roll world, it is in some way, but I think the discipline is very, very, very important. People that do it at the highest level, they're up early every day. So usually I'm up before 5 o'clock, and I'm trying to get working in by 6:30 latest. If we got to be on set, usually sometimes we're set for 5:30 in the morning. And because we do such long hours, and our hours are usually so deep in, there is no margin for error. And so you're fully focused at all times, which is really pressure on the body. And if you don't take care of it, your lifespan in the film business becomes very little. There's a lot of places, by the way, that compare a lifespan in the film business to boxing, like 7 years, 8 years, because people will burn out. It's very common. So you got to take care of yourself. I think that's something I'm still figuring out. Like I said, I don't look at work as work. And so that's something personally I go through on a daily cycle. What is work and what is life? And how do you balance that? And so it's this love-hate relationship of finding balance. And I think because I personally don't consider it work, the balance for me is different. To each individual, they're going to find their own medium of how they want to tell stories and work in film. But on an overall, I have a formula of one for love, one for money. And so if you can do one job for love and then one job for money, at some point you'll find balance. And as soon as you find that balance, you'll start to give in more into the love and less for the money, eventually realizing that the love is actually giving you more money than what it was before. And I think when you come to that equilibrium and then you make that crossing, and I think that's a really beautiful point as an artist, because you realize the thing that was in my head the entire time is something I can project and live through. And that's a beautiful experience. Be completely honest with yourself, because the only way you even know you have a voice is if you're going to listen to it. If you consider that your body was like an iPhone and the latest chip was like your brain, then every single chip needs an operating system. So your brain is a great piece of device, but it only works on what you give it. So in a phone, an operating system is what helps it run. In your body, it's your heart, it's blood. But what happens when your phone dies? It runs out of battery and it's done. So latest software, latest everything, but it's paperweight. And in your body, I think that's the soul, right? So mind, body, and soul make this connection in, and that's your voice. It's because every time you try to find the balance between the three, that's your ikigai, that's your purpose, that's your voice. And no one can know your path because no one goes through the experiences that you go through. And no one understands what you're made up of, because that's your story to tell. And so your voice really comes from there. Be honest with yourself why you do what you do, and then go down that path of how do I connect my mind, body, and soul. And along the way, you'll find your voice. I really want to thank Nottingham Trent University. I want to thank Kaplan Colleges and Nottingham Trent International College. I had an experience of a lifetime that allowed me to explore and change as an artist. And the only thing I can leave other artists with is with what is happening in the world right now. We get to really bridge a world that other people can't. Politics can't bridge peace like art can. So I think this is the one thing I'd love to leave people with, is tell your true stories and leave the rest to the universe.